So 200 years ago, this young woman somehow found it in her heart to speak up, despite everything that was around her. And I think of the times that we are in right now, where we can only be free when our neighbor is free, as Sean sang. And the threats to justice and liberty and people of color, and to many people who are not WASP, heteronormative, white, cisgender, go ahead and make all the normative statements. If we don't fit into a box, who is in danger next? And so when we listen to the clarion cry of 200 years ago, we can hear it echo into now. And thinking about, what does it mean to have justice for all? And I think it's important to think about what grounded this young woman and her belief and her desire to speak up even at threat to herself, even in the face of laws and people telling her, your body doesn't matter, your freedom doesn't matter, you don't matter. And she sat down, we've all heard the story of sitting down on the bus. Well, this is sitting down a long time ago. And she also stood up. She stood up a long time ago. And what I find beautiful about the Unitarian Universalist tradition is we have a lot of visionary leaders to draw from. And I think it's important that we lift up stories, especially right now, when diversity, equity, and inclusion are treated like bad words. And stories are being erased from our websites, from our national parks. And so we have the power here to share stories. And so today we celebrate hip hip hooray. Hip hip hooray. yeah. Hip hip hooray for Frances Ellen Watkins Harper 200th birthday, and that is something to be joyful about, that 200 years ago, this woman found it in herself to make a difference in spite of all that was around her. And that's what we need, is we need stories of hope. And she was a prominent Unitarian Universalist, though she was a Unitarian, not a Universalist, who was a leading abolitionist. She joined the Unitarian Church in Philadelphia in 1870, a significant choice that allowed her to align her work for social justice with a faith community that supported her. She also served in the Women's Christian Temperance Union and also for the National Association of Colored Women. She felt a strong connection to the liberal religious principles of Unitarianism and was drawn by the focus on that people could be free. And yet, if she had wanted to be a minister, that would have been a hard road. Universalists were one of the earliest to adopt women ministers, but the first time that we had a woman of color in our movement was 1981. And so there's always more work to do. She was born a free African-American woman in Baltimore, a city that was home to over 10,000 freed Black people, as well as thousands of slaves. Having studied at her uncle's school, she went on to do work, as we talked about. And I think about what are the lessons that we can take from her life, her passion, her bravery. Her best known phrase was, "We are all bound together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its soul." And so when we hurt people who don't have power, it affects all of us. And I think many of us have justice fatigue. It's exhausting to see what keeps happening. But we also can be buoyed by, we have local public officials who are trying to make a difference. We have local activists people on our school board, people sitting right here. And there are people who are trying to find a good way and to be a light in the midst of so much that's hard. And Frances was one of those people. She took the beauty of her language and her gift at oratory and called people out. I don't know if you were listening to some of the early stuff, but I was like, you go. I just wanted to just get excited that language, oftentimes when I hear poetry from 200 years ago or further, I kind of cringe, at some of the language or some of the thoughts. And most of what I've read from her, it just sounds like a call to action from the past and a call to our present. At the World's Congress of Representative Women, organized by the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, Harper spoke about women's political future. And it was a clarion call for early feminists. And in 1866, she was invited to address the National Women's Rights Convention. And so 66, think how close that was to the Civil War. She demanded equal rights for all women, including women of color, like Sojourner Truth. Watkins called out the suffragette white women who, in their quest to vote, ignored their fellow women of color. And here's something that she said. I do not believe that giving the woman the ballot is immediately going to cure all the ills of life. I do not believe that white women are dewdrops just exhaled from the skies. I think that, like men, they may be divided into three classes: the good, the bad, and the indifferent. The good would vote according to their conscience and principles. The bad are dictated by prejudice or malice. And the indifferent will vote on the strongest side of the question with the winning party. You white women here speak of rights. I speak of wrongs. Born of a race whose inheritance has been outrage and wrong, most of my life has been spent battling these wrongs. But I did not feel as keenly as others that I had these rights with other women, which are now demanded. Talk of giving women the ballot box? Go on. It is normal school, and the white women of this country need it. While there exists this brutal element in society that tramples upon the feeble and treads down the weak, I tell you that if there is any class of people who need to be lifted out of their airy nothings and selfishness, it is the white women of America. Whoa. So she, you can imagine most of her audience was white women. She was fearless, and I'm sure probably fearful. And so just such an inspiration to call things out and to say, hey people, this is what we see. And right now there's just so much noise and so much that is not true that is said by public leaders that want to fire people for giving statistics and want to put somebody else in who will give their own statistics, or take away the rights of people to education, to healthcare, to all of these things. And so here we are around again. The need to call out what's wrong, what's right, who's indifferent. Get off your tails, everybody. I'm not talking about you all. I'm talking to the world. Get off your tails and vote. We didn't have the kind of voter turnout in our last presidential election that people thought we would. And in local and other and national and state elections, when people don't show up, the indifference just gives it to the loudest or the winning party. And so if we are convicted that we care for our neighbor, if we can only be free when our neighbor is free, then we need people to exercise their freedom and to not let history be erased or let people's stories be erased. And so when I think about the Unitarians of the time that she was in supporting her, here we are, Unitarian Universalist of our time. What can we support? What can we shout out from this space? What can we love out with our hearts? And what can we proclaim that people have a right to their bodies, people have a right to their freedom, and a right to be all that they can be? And so when I think about our land of the free, oftentimes it's not feeling so free anymore. And I want to be patriotic. I want to believe in this country, but the country that loves, the country that includes, the country that has freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom to read, and where people fought to end slavery, not to round people up in the middle of the night and ship them out of the country or put them in prison camps. That is not the America or the world that Frances Ellen Watkins Harper fought for, and is not the land that we fight for today. And so, whose voice is remembered? Who has statues built and which leaders and visionaries are taught about in school all year long, not just on Women's Month or in Black History Month or now at all? Despite many barriers, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper does have an enduring legacy. There are people all over the country this year lifting up her voice and her writings, and there are efforts to include her in museum exhibits. And so these are the things that we lift up. I'm going to close with her words. One of her best-known phrases that I said before, I want to say it one more time. We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse on its soul. And then my modern adaptation of that is, we have to be what we want to be. We have to do we have to follow our values. We have to do the things that are in our hearts. And she said these words in 1875 at the centennial anniversary of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery. What we need today in the onward march of humanity is a public sentiment in favor of common justice and simple mercy. We have a civilization which has produced grand and magnificent results, diffused knowledge, overthrown slavery, made constant conquest over nature, and built up a wonderful material prosperity. But two things are wanting in American civilization: a keener and deeper, broader and tenderer sense of justice, a sense of humanity which shall crystallize into the life of the nation, a sentiment that justice, simple justice, is the right, not simply of the strong and powerful, but of the feeblest and weakest of all God's children, a deeper and broader humanity that will teach people to look upon their feeble siblings. Again, the language is, people aren't feeble, but that's okay. Not as vermin to be crushed out, or beast of burden to be bridled and bitted, but as the children of a living God, a God who earnestly hopes in perfect wisdom and perfect love for the best and good of all. Whatever our beliefs may be, I know people believe in love. We believe in justice, and we believe that each person has the inherent right and dignity to be of worth, to be seen and heard. May we fight for that and remember Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Hip hip hooray!